In this video, we're going to learn how to win with the bishop pair from the legend of chess himself, Wilhelm Stienitz. This game was played in 1873, and it's good to learn from historical chess games, because your understanding of chess can evolve as chess theory itself evolved. So let's get into the game. Wilhelm Stienitz was black, and we have a king-pawn game with knight c3. So both sides developing pieces, and Wilhelm Stienitz plays g6. The idea obviously to fink out of the bishop and get the bishop on this diagonal. White opens the center. They exchange. And Stienitz plays bishop to g7. Now I want you to note that here white plays bishop e3, defending his knight. Now a beginner might play knight takes c6, which removes the knight from d4. And after b takes c6, black has the open b file. Combined with this bishop and the fact that the knight has to depart from the board is not good for white. So he defends his center with bishop e3. Stienitz plays knight e7. He really wants to play pawn to d5 to neutralize white's space advantage. White plays bishop c4, controlling d5. Stienitz plays d6, freeing this bishop, and holding back white's center. White castles, Stienitz castles, and white plays pawn to f4. So here Stienitz plays knight to a5, and we can see the genesis of how Stienitz wins the bishop pair. He attacks this bishop, and if the bishop were to retreat like bishop b3, he can just capture the bishop whenever he wants. He can do it later to gain more time, but he can win the bishop pair. White plays bishop d3, and according to the engine, bishop e2 is a lot better. So white plays bishop d3, and Stienitz plays pawn to d5, breaking in the center and neutralizing white's space advantage. White captures the pawn, Stienitz captures back with a knight, and then more exchanges take place. You can see Stienitz has activated his queen, and he's neutralized white's space advantage with the e-pawn. White plays pawn to c3, defending his knight. And Stienitz jumps in. Well, first he plays rook d8, threatening to play c5, kicking back this knight, and then taking this bishop. So, Samuel Rosenthall plays queen c2. This way, if Stienitz were to play c5, he can play bishop to e4, and Stienitz would have to drop back his queen, and then he can move his knight out of the way, and Stienitz has not won a piece. So instead, Stienitz plays knight to c4, and he attacks white's dark squared bishop. And here the best move is bishop f2, just maintaining the position and not giving up the bishop. But white couldn't handle the pressure, and he took Stienitz's knight with his light square bishop. So Stienitz retreats, or recaptures, and Rosenthall plays queen f2. Now let's look at the position. Stienitz has the bishop pair. White only has one bishop, and he has a knight. So what does this mean? It means that this light square bishop is going to dominate all of these light squares. And right now, Stienitz, this light square bishop is only coming to g4 or f5 or whatever, but what Stienitz wants to do is fink out of this bishop, then he can come to b7 and get on this long diagonal, which is very powerful, or bishop a6 and get on this diagonal. Now, if you look at the best placed pieces, this bishop is great, this bishop is great, this bishop is okay, this knight is amazing. So the first rule to getting a winning position with a bishop pair is deny the opponent's knight any outposts, any advanced squares. So Stienitz starts with c5, kicking the knight out of d4. Rosenthal goes back to f3, and now his new idea is to jump into e5. Again, he wants an advanced outpost for his knight. First, Stienitz has to defend his pawn, so he plays b6. But now you can see that this diagonal is open for the bishop. And like I said, these light squares are controlled by black because white does not have a light squared bishop. So Rosenthal jumps into e5, and Stienitz plays queen e6. His queen was under attack. Now Rosenthal attacks black's rook on a6, and he's prevented bishop b7. but Stienitz plays bishop a6, gaining a tempo on the rook. Rosenthal plays rook e1, and now he's defending this bishop, and his rook is lined up with Stienitz's queen. So now we see further denial of white's knight. Stienitz plays f6, kicks the knight out. The knight can no longer retreat to f3, so it goes to g4. And Stienitz plays h5, kicks the knight back again. So now you can see the knight has been pushed all the way back into the hinterlands, and Stienitz has developed his bishop. So first of all, this rook is lined up with Stienitz's queen, so he steps out of the file. But he keeps his queen on this diagonal where it's attacking a2 and can come into d5 or c4. Rosenthal plays f5, and basically the idea is if Stienitz were to capture this pawn, now he's busted up Stienitz's pawn structure and opened the file to the king. So Stienitz plays g5 and maintains his composure of the pawn structure. Now these pawns are connected. You can see Stienitz has gained space on the king side. Maybe these pawns can advance in the future. But also Stienitz has a very safe king. He's got this bishop here and queen defending his king. He can go to h7 if he needs to. So there's not going to be any back rank problems. And just to note that if white were to try to bust open this kingside pawn structure, Stienitz can just lock up the pawns either way he tries it. So Rosenthal plays rook d1, and Stienitz plays bishop b7. So now that his queen is on f7 and protecting b7, he can occupy this long diagonal. And this is a killer diagonal because it goes straight to the enemy king and controls a lot of the board. Rosenthal plays queen g3, but you can see that Stienitz can kick back the queen, and the queen is just defending g2. He knows he has to defend g2 because Stienitz can play things like queen d5 or come into c6 and attack g2. Stienitz starts advancing on the d file. Even though the engine gives us a question mark, I don't think it actually says it's a worse position. But his basic idea is to double rooks and gain control of the d file. Rosenthal takes, and Stienitz takes back. And now you can see Stienitz's queen is active. He's putting enormous pressure on this g2 pawn, and that's because the bishop that the opponent doesn't have, that bishop becomes more powerful, so you can see that he's controlling the long diagonal. Rosenthal plays rook d1, but he's just left behind this f5 pawn. Rosenthal didn't have any real way to defend the f5 pawn. For instance, if he played queen h3 to defend the pawn, you can see that after rook e8, attacking this bishop and attacking the rook indirectly, Rosenthal can't even, take this pawn because of mate. So he has to passively defend. Maybe Stienitz can play g4 and disrupt the communication to the pawn, but it's really just not that easy to hold on to that pawn. So by playing f5, he's actually weakened that pawn, and it becomes a target. So Stienitz picks up this pawn, and now his king is even safer because there's no pawn attacking g6. Rosenthal goes in with his queen, and Stienitz plays bishop d5. And like the arrow shows, he wants to play rook e8, get on the e file, and also he's attacking a2. So Rosenthal plays b3 just to stop that. Even though Stienitz might not have even taken this pawn, he might have played something completely different like rook e8. But he defends the pawn, and Stienitz plays rook e8. So now Rosenthal plays c4, counterattacking the bishop, and Stienitz drops his bishop back, tucks the bishop back into f7. You can see this is a very solid king position. It's almost like shogi, where you protect your king with pieces, and the king can go to h7, the bishop can go to g6. Rosenthal drops back his bishop because it was under attack, and Stienitz goes in for the kill with rook e2. Now he's starting to take this knight and checkmate on g2, and Rosenthal plays passively with rook f1. He has to defend the king side. If he were to come in with a rook, simply bishop f8, and the king is completely safe, and Rosenthal has no time to play something like queen b8 attacking again, because he'll just get mated. So Stienitz is the aggressor here. He's got the aggressive position. Rosenthal defends. Stienitz comes into c2. He's taking control of this file. Rosenthal goes back to defend, and Stienitz picks up another pawn. So you can see that as he's being active, he's picking up pawns on, as insurance to win. And these pawns are very weak now. So Rosenthal checks. Stienitz steps up to h7. Rosenthal goes back, and Stienitz improves his bishop with bishop g6. So you can see this bishop is active on this diagonal. It could try bishop b4 to increase pressure, even bishop d3 possibly in the future. But Rosenthal plays h4. He's desperately trying to get something going, but he's just very passive and locked up. Stienitz locks the position up with the g4. And now you can see Rosenthal trying to break out of the box with knight d3. And Stienitz just picks up another pawn. It's just completely ruthless. He's pinning this knight now. And Rosenthal goes out with queen c7, and Stienitz just picks up the knight. So Stienitz completely made Rosenthal passive, and largely in part due to the amazing power of this light squared bishop to control the game in the diagonals. And even though Stienitz didn't really use his g7 bishop that much, after further advance of this pawn, it could have eventually come into the game. So that was always looming as a threat over Rosenthal's position. So thanks for watching. If you learned anything, give me a like and a subscribe. Have a nice day.